Thank you for joining me on Easter Sunday, or perhaps the week after Easter, for the concluding presentation entitled Holy Week, Art Through the Ages. Today we celebrate the resurrection with artwork stretching from the 11th century to the modern age. I'd like to first begin by reading a selection from the Gospel of Mark as he describes the resurrection. It's chapter 16, verses 1 through 7. When the Sabbath was over, Mary Magdalene, Mary the mother of James, and Salome bought spices so that they might go to anoint Jesus' body. Very early on the first day of the week, just after sunrise, they were on their way to the tomb, and they asked each other, "Who will roll the stone away from the entrance of the tomb?" But when they looked up, they saw that the stone, which was very large, had been rolled away. As they entered the tomb, they saw a young man dressed in a white robe sitting on the right side, and they were alarmed. "Don't be alarmed," he said. "You are looking for Jesus the Nazarene, who was crucified. He has risen. He is not here. See the place where they laid him? But go tell his disciples and Peter, he is going ahead of you into Galilee. There you will see him, just as he told you." The first artwork that I'd like to share with you about the resurrection is actually a mosaic, not a painting, from the 11th century, and it is located in the St. Luke Monastery in Greece. It shows a triumphant Jesus entering and trampling on the gates of hell. See in the painting, there are remnants of the gates of hell that he is stepping on. He is carrying a Orthodox Church cross, because this is a artwork that is in the tradition of the Eastern Russian or Ukrainian and Greek Orthodox churches. It shows him in white flowing garments. And the interesting aspect of this painting or this mosaic is that he is, in his other hand, he's holding or grasping the arm of a figure dressed in white and a female figure beside him dressed in red. And these two figures represent Adam and Eve as they are ascending from their sarcophagus or their burial in hell, where they are being resurrected with Jesus and being freed from original sin and with their Savior. And this formula appears in a lot of resurrection mosaics and paintings of the Orthodox Church. And the two figures to the left represent the Byzantine emperor and empress of the period. The second artwork that I'm displaying for you is called The Resurrection by the Renaissance artist Piero della Francesca, and it dates to the 1460s. Francesca is showing Jesus at the moment of his resurrection with his leg and foot on the edge of the sarcophagus that he is emerging from. The artist has painted Jesus with a stern and impassive look as he emerges from the tomb, and in front of the tomb are four sleeping soldiers. One is rubbing the sleep from his eyes as he is awakened by this arising Jesus from the tomb. And this artist has shown us the difference between human in the foreground and the divine in the background with Jesus' resurrection. He also shows the difference between life and death. On one side of Jesus is a dead and barren landscape, while on the opposite side, on the right side of Jesus, the landscape is verdant and green and living. And Jesus in the middle represents the division between human death and divine life. The next painting is from the period called the Renaissance and Baroque period. From 1700, it's called The Resurrection of Christ by the French artist Noël Coypel. Coypel was a French artist of mostly the 17th century. He died in 1707, so this painting is near the end of his life. He had a long career as an academic painter. He was the director of the Academy of Painting in Paris through much of his adult years, and he was a very celebrated French realist painting of the Baroque period. This painting shows Jesus triumphantly rising in midair above his tomb, and an angel in white garments pointing to him as the three guards, Roman guards, who have guarded the temple are running in alarm. Two have fallen. One has a shield shielding his face from what he is seeing, and the other has a sword in his hand, and the other one has a helmet on his head and is running away from the scene in a dramatic full of motion event. The two figures to the right perhaps are Mary Magdalene and perhaps Peter, who witnessed the aftermath of the resurrection, or it could be two patrons of the artist who supported monetarily the artist in his painting. This is very much a Baroque painting, showing much of the techniques of the day of flowing garments and clouds and angels and flowing white raiment and a landscape in the background, a little bit of everything in this very action-packed event. The next painting is called The Resurrection, another French artist named Gustave Doré, and it dates to 1865. This French artist was primarily a printmaker who worked primarily in wood block prints, thus the black and white and gray image that he is showing us here. He was a Bible illustrator of the mid-19th century. A famous Bible that he put together that had many illustrations from the Old and New Testament. This shows the interior of the tomb with bright rays of light shining down through openings in the tomb, illuminating an angel that sits on a block of stone with the slab where Jesus laid in the tomb with white garments displayed on the tomb where he laid, and then two figures coming down the steps into the tomb, and I suppose these are the two disciples, Peter and John, who ran to the tomb to see what the three women who had originally visited the tomb with the spices ran to tell them about what they had seen, the angel proclaiming Jesus' resurrection. This is very much a 19th century realistic type of painting that was popular in that period. The next painting is called The Resurrection by Carl Heinrich Bloch, and it dates from 1875. Bloch was a Danish painter from the mid-19th century who worked 14 years on 23 paintings in the life of Christ. This is his resurrection painting of Jesus emerging from the tomb very triumphantly with his hands raised above and a halo, which offers really the only color in the picture, bright color other than the subdued whites and sepias, browns and tans that dominate in the picture. Easter lilies sprout from his feet, and the two angels at the slab of the tomb on the ground, they're in adoration of Jesus' resurrection. And then there are some elements in the front or the foreground, it looks like a Roman soldier's helmet and a sword that's left behind by the guards guarding Jesus' tomb. The next painting is from the same period, the Victorian period from 1876. It's called The Holy Women at the Tomb of Christ by the French artist William Adolphe Bouguereau. You've seen other paintings by Bouguereau in the Christmas art program that I presented during the Christmas season. He was popular as an artist of angels and of the infant Jesus, a lot of Madonna and child paintings. This is his depiction of the three women as they are startled by what they see in the tomb. An angel that shows in white, stark white light in the background, and the three women are in various poses of disbelief and awe. Each one is wearing a gray or black dressing that might indicate their state of mourning, and one is carrying a metal bowl that no doubt carried spices that they intended to anoint the body of Jesus with. And now we pass into the modern age, and I present 3 or 4 paintings depicting the resurrection from a modern standpoint. The first painting of the modern age that I'm showing is called The Resurrection by Jason Janicki. And Janicki is a painter that he is a native of Kansas City. He painted in 2008 this image of the resurrection. He was supported by a patron who paid him for 3 years to paint religious scenes from the New Testament. And this is Janicki's picture of the resurrection. It's from a different viewpoint than the other paintings that I've shown. This viewpoint is from inside the tomb, looking out as Jesus emerges from the tomb, showing his scarred back from the whipping, the nail holes that are in his feet and in his wrist are shown very graphically as he emerges from the tomb. That just to the right is the boulder or the rock that closed the tomb that's been rolled away. In the background are 3 stick-like projections on a rocky crag, indicating the 3 crosses that he was crucified in the middle of. And then beyond that, Jerusalem, the gates of Jerusalem, and the architecture of outside the walled city. Very interesting perspective of Jesus, not showing his face, but a viewpoint from behind as he quickly seems like he is emerging from the tomb triumphantly. And the light in this painting is especially moving, in my opinion. The next painting is called The First News of the Resurrection by an artist named Rose Dedock Dahl, and she painted this painting in 2007. It shows the 3 women who have visited the tomb quickly running away from the tomb to share the message of the resurrection with the disciples as the angel in the tomb instructed them to do. I like this painting because it shows a lot of color, it shows a lot of emotion and surprise and joy in the face of the especially the first woman in blue as she clutches a vessel probably full of oil or spices to anoint Jesus' body, her first intention. And then the other 2 women behind her in different colored veils, more carefully stepping and running through the stony landscape as they hurriedly go to the disciples to tell them what they know. The next painting is called The Resurrection by Peter Adams, and it's another contemporary painting from 2018. It shows the moment when Mary Magdalene in John's Gospel recognizes Jesus. She had mistaken him for the gardener, and Jesus tells her, speaks to her, and she immediately recognizes him as Jesus. Perhaps the sunlight behind Jesus had blinded her, so that she may not have known who she was encountering. The light is in the form of a cross behind Jesus's head, and it shines very white and intense on his garments and over his head, and onto Mary as she as she bows down to Jesus with her hands up in exclamation as she realizes who it is. Peter Adams is a 72-year-old painter, American painter, who has painted a number of images of religious art in his lifetime. The last painting in the Resurrection series is called Easter Sunday, God's Resurrection, by the artist Marie-Eve Ortiz. This is a very impressionistic painting of the resurrection. It shows basically a green, in the foreground, a green landscape and a cloud-filled sky that dominates the painting, with light shining, yellow and white light, intense light shining down from between the clouds, and what looks like either a cross or a figure of Jesus, perhaps, representing the resurrection in a very impressionistic, colorful, and very, very much full of motion type of painting. And I end this discussion of her painting, Marie-Eve Ortiz's painting, with what she said about what she was trying to capture. And she says, "I love to create colorful paintings with lots of movement and texture and strong contrasts in lights and shadows." And she is an Australian artist who loves to paint religious impressionistic paintings in this modern age. That concludes this series of artwork for Holy Week and Easter Sunday. I hope you've enjoyed these paintings and artworks as much as I have enjoyed presenting them to you. I also hope that they have been a meaningful part of your Holy Week observation, and I hope you have a blessed Easter and a happy Eastertide. And I thank you for your attention for the week of Holy Week and Easter Sunday, as we have observed the number of ways that artists have depicted the events in the life of Jesus and his resurrection. Thank you.